Are you going to replace the GTV? I've actually got a... Hello you lot, Miller Corner here. Welcome back once again to another Q&A. And I'm going to warn you, this video was filmed a little bit last minute because I'm travelling for work this week and I don't really have time to sit and film a full-length video and edit it like I normally do. Hence I'm filming this at the last minute in my mate's hallway. So my mate, you're watching this, you know who you are. Thank you very much for loan of your hallway. I put a call out on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram and I was flooded with comments from you lovely lot that you want me to answer. And a quick warning before we begin, if I don't answer your question in this video, the main reason for that is probably because I've already answered it in a previous Q&A. So if it doesn't get answered in this video, I'm sorry, but check the playlist on my channel, Your Questions Answered, because there's a very good chance that in a previous Q&A session, I have answered it, whether it's live or pre-recorded. With that said, we've got a lot to get through, so let's crack on. We're starting with my YouTube community post, and first up is Ruby Cupid MB, who's given me a choice of half a dozen different questions to answer. A lot of them I have answered before, so I'll stick with the original one, which is, if you could have a small car that wasn't a Fiat, what would you pick? Obviously not being a Fiat eliminates some of my favourite cars, so that's worth considering, but it would probably have to be a K car, something like a Daihatsu Mira, or even just a K10 Micra. I know it's not a K car, but I love those little nuggets, so something small and Japanese, probably a K car, but Fiat for life. Obviously. Next up, I'm going to have to read this one out, and I do apologise if I mispronounce it. Daniel Arctois, I believe, says, what are my thoughts on the Fiat Panda 100 HP? It's a wicked little thing. It looks fantastic, they're cheap to buy, they're cheap to run, and if it's just a Panda but faster and more fun, that can only be a good thing. The Crazy Car Duo asks, or rather ask, what's the 0 to 60 time of the Super Seicento? I don't know, I've never timed it to be honest. I would estimate it to be somewhere around 10, maybe 11 seconds. The factory time is 13 and a half, I believe, and my car is obviously a bit more powerful, it's got some better suspension and tyres and what have you, but on the other hand, I don't know what the weight is in comparison to a stock car, and I don't actually know how much power my modified 1242 is producing. At the end of the day, it's more about a smile car than a numbers car, and that is what it's all about. Richard Bullock asks, if there was no such car as a Seicento, what would your ideal daily driver be? The thing is, I'm not actually dailying my Seicento anymore. It's frankly too nice and too precious to me to risk some Karen dinging the door with her Nissan Qashqai in a car park, so I don't actually daily drive it. With that said, a Panda or a Punto both do a brilliant job of being dailies. It would probably be a small Fiat, let's be honest. Literally Tom asks, do you believe you can't be a petrol head until you've owned an Alfa? It's a difficult one. I'm of the opinion that you're a petrol head if cars or bikes or any form of motorised machinery appeal to you in any way. That is what makes you a petrol head, even if you're only into electric cars. But with the whole you can't be a proper petrol head till you've owned an Alfa argument, it's hard to say. I mean, I owned an Alfa and I don't feel any more of a petrol head for having done it, but it was definitely nice to do, and there is definitely something about Alfas that makes you feel good. So do they make you a petrol head? It's up for debate, but do they make you feel special? Absolutely they do. Wolves Wheels asks, apart from Italy, what country produces the best cars? I'm gonna say France. I know that's probably a controversial answer, but there's so much French stuff that I adore. The Citroën DS, the Peugeot 205, pretty much every hot Renault they've ever produced. France produced some really quirky, really fun and wacky cars, and frankly that's what I'm all about. So if it can't be Italy or Poland, because you know technically offshoots a lot of Italian cars, it's got to be France. Chris BMX17 asks, have you thought about doing an all-wheel drive conversion on the Super Seicento? It is actually a known thing. A few people with Chinks and Seicentos have done it, primarily using the running gear from an older Fiat Panda 4x4. To be honest, probably not. I haven't got aspirations of that car being powerful enough to need all-wheel drive, quite frankly, but also the weight and the complexity and also the rarity of the parts you'd have to do it with means if anything broke, it would be almost impossible to replace parts. So simplicity, and if it does mean if I get a little bit more wheel spin, who cares, just makes it more fun. So yep, it's probably going to be staying front wheel drive for the near future. Next up, Maxwell has asked 5 fantastic questions. I can't remember them all off the top of my head because I'm not an auto cue machine, so I've got them all written here and we'll go through them one by one. Cinquecento Sporting versus Fiat Uno Turbo, which do you prefer? It's apples versus oranges. You've got a tiny little nugget that doesn't actually have any more power, it just looks cool, versus an actual turbo hot hatch. So it's not really a fair comparison, but given that they're both small and they're both awesome, why not both? Car or bike, you can only have one. It's got to be cars. My first love automotively was cars, and I do adore bikes, but you can get a little bit of that bike thrill from some really, really bare bones cars. So if I can only go cars or bikes, got to be cars. How completed is the Shinto on a scale of 0 to 100%? I mean, we know a project car is never truly finished, but in my head, bearing in mind what's left to do to it, 70% maybe, but that remaining 30% is all the big stuff, so that remaining 30% might well take 30 years, but it is going to get done. Honest. Any plans for any collaborations? I would love to do some collaborations. I do want to do something again with Hubnut at some point because frankly Ian was a laugh to work with and we did a great video of it. I'd like to do something with Brad BWTV, Sean Barrett would be another good one to do stuff with. Steph, I drive a classic. If we could do something together, I know I don't really own a classic car, but if we could do something together, that would be really cool. Yeah, if you're in the YouTube video car sphere and you want to do a collaboration, hit me up. Let's make it happen. Any plans to do any reviews? Well, I would like to get some more car reviews on the channel, so make this my official announcement. If you have got a car, preferably located in Southeast England, because that's where I live, and you would like to let me drive it and review it for the channel, do please get in touch. You can DM me on Instagram or on the Miller Corner Facebook page. If you've got a mad car, doesn't have to be Italian, doesn't have to be a Fiat, doesn't even have to be an old car, just anything that's cool and a bit different, get in touch and you know, we might even make a video out of it. And the best part is, you'll even get to hear me saying hello you lot live in person. Other than that, Max thought fantastic set of questions, my friend, and you said you're watching from Uruguay, which is frankly fantastic. Cheers for watching. Are you sure you want to delete? Which I happen to know is Phil, so Phil, thanks again for watching loyally as always, has said, which piece do you play as in Monopoly? The car. Always the car. Dominic Zuck asked, what's the best era for cars? Now, best is a difficult one. I mean, the 1930s when people were actually starting to be able to afford their first ever car, or the 50s when there was all that pioneering technology, particularly from the Citroen DS obviously, or the 60s when style was fantastic. But for me, it'll probably have to be the 90s, because you get just enough old school there in that, yes, you've got fuel injection, but you haven't got common rail in just yet. You haven't got sequential turbos or automatic flappy paddle gearboxes or anything like that, but there's still enough modern-ish technology to make the cars usable and reliable. So for me, the 1990s was probably peak car, and you got just enough old school and new school, and a lot of the 90s hero cars are still fairly affordable, and I reckon a lot of them are going to be big classics in the future. Mark Townsend asks, I've never really worked on cars before, but I'd like to get into it. What advice would you give for an easy to work on classic car? My experience on working on actual proper classic cars, I presume you mean 50s and 60s stuff, is fairly limited. I don't own a Morris Minor or a Mini or an Austin 1100, but to be honest, one of the cars that genuinely is really easy to work on is a Saiy, or if you want something a bit older, a Cinquecento, or a Panda, I guess, an early Mark 1 or Mark 2 Panda, because they're so simple and they're so basic and they're put together with really common nut and bolt sizes that are fairly easy to take apart. If you just want to actually learn how to spanner on a car, you can do a lot worse than an 80s or a 90s Fiat. Henry Hull 8538 asks, are you missing your Alfa GTV? A little bit, yeah. I did really like that car, and as I said, it made you feel special. The interior was fantastic and it did look the business, even with the slight paint imperfections that my car had. It's worth bearing in mind though that the money from that auction did go to a good cause, and the new owner, Stuart, is a fantastic guy. In fact, I'm going to put his Twitter handle on the screen now. Go and follow his Twitter and his blog, because he's keeping up to date with stuff he's doing on the Alfa. That car's improvements are not done yet, so frankly I do miss it a bit, but also I feel like it's gone to the right home. Xyloquin asks, what's the stereo like in the Super Saiy? And very tame by modified car standards is my answer to that. The speakers are all pretty much standard, although they are the speakers out of the HX02 Saiy, not the RE53 one, because the included speakers with the old one seem to be marginally better, more sort of full, for want of a better word. There's no amp, there's no sub, and the head unit is an aftermarket JVC one. It's got aux and USB, but no Bluetooth, which would be nice, I guess. Yeah, I would like to upgrade the stereo, but it's not high up the list at the moment. But one day, who knows, we might go full max power and fill the boot with subs. We're never doing that. JUIWC asks, what's my opinion on JDM cars? Well, it depends. There's such a broad spectrum of JDM cars. On the one end, you've got your Nissan Silvias and your Skylines and your RX-7s and your Evos, all your hero JDM monsters, which I love, but I'm kind of bored of hearing about. I see a Supra making 800, 1,000 horsepower, and it doesn't excite me because it's a bit of an internet cliche, I suppose. It would be incredible to drive, I'm sure, but I love the little JDM nuggets, K cars, tiny little things, Daihatsu Tantos and Suzuki Altos. I drove a Nissan Figaro the other day. I know it's not a K car, but it is JDM, and Yeah, really like the Figaro. It's not going to be on this channel, unfortunately, but go and subscribe to the channel I do for work, Classics World, because in the next few weeks, the Figaro review will be going up. I drove it and, yeah, loved it. Now we're on to the Miller Corner Facebook page, and first up, Richard Luke has asked 2 questions. The first one is, are there any plans for any audio upgrades on the Shinto? Well, I've kind of already answered that one. And the other one is, if you had free reign to modify your dad's new Fiat Panda, what would you do to it? It's kind of a difficult one because the charm in that particular Panda is that it's so simple and so basic, so I wouldn't go turboing it or putting it on air ride or anything like that. I'd probably put some nice wheels on it. Some ATS cups would really suit that car, even in white, because white cars with white wheels is pretty damn cool. A nice audio system would be good, modern head unit, which we might be putting in it anyway, and maybe some nice interior bits. Some Abarth 500 seats would sit quite nicely in that. Craig Anthony Cooper says that he loves the channel and the Shinto. So Craig, thank you very much, you legend. And he said, what are your next plans for the Shinto? The question I get asked pretty much more than any other, apart from when are you buying a 126? And the answer for that is I'm not giving anything away, actually. You'll have to wait and see, partly because I haven't actually decided yet, but also because I don't want to give anything away. I want to make some videos for you lot. Some more suspension stuff and brakes and power and all that. Yeah, there's a lot to do, as always. Rob Channeler, I believe you pronounced that, has asked, what's the time and what's for dinner? The time as we speak is 10 to 9, and dinner today was lasagna. Was nice. Connor Haynes has asked an unusual question. He said, what's your next bike likely to be? The ER5 is going nowhere. The mods and the improvements on that are going to continue, as I've said, when the weather starts to get a bit colder and I'm less keen to ride it every weekend. But the ER5 is sticking around probably forever, to be honest. I can't see any reason why I'd ever get rid of it, as I said, but I would quite like to drive some sort of big adventure bike next. I like the idea of a big BMW GS or Honda of some sort that does off-roading stuff, just to try it, if only because I fancy myself as a young Ewan McGregor. Finally, we're on to Instagram, and DLW2810 has asked, would you ever consider an advanced driving course? Maybe. I'm not too sure yet. I mean, on the one hand, they can really help with your car control and they can genuinely make you a better road and fast road stroke track driver. On the other hand, without wishing to sound arrogant, I quite like to learn on the job, if that makes sense, because you can learn different things about different cars. Kind of nice to learn on the job, although in some cases learning on the job equates to crashing cars, which I'm not too keen to do, so maybe. I might get some track tuition one day, who knows. Will S21 has asked, are there any plans for a bigger engine or even forced induction for the Super Shinto? This is another common question, and in my head I've got 2 possibilities that are whizzing around and battling it out, and I can't really decide the heart versus head, the feel versus performance, the reality versus what makes a good YouTube video. I haven't really decided yet. There will be more power coming, but I'm not going to tell you when or what it is, because frankly even I don't know at this point. Ian, Team Boilo Classics, who submitted his gorgeous Mini Traveller for the very first virtual car meet, so Ian, thanks again for that, has asked, when are you buying a Classic Mini? I kind of want to own a Classic Mini at some point, because my experience with them has been all too brief, and I must be honest, I wasn't blown away, so maybe I should grab one before they all go up to umpteen £1,000,000. I do like them, but we'll see. S60 MSO has asked, what's the worst car ever made? I can't really comment on the worst car ever made, but I can certainly comment on the worst one I've ever driven. By a country mile, the Renault Captur 0.9 litre. Appalling car in pretty much every way. Hateful, hateful, hateful. James 1242 has asked, do bears shit in the woods? They do, but only if someone hears it. Harley Mayer has asked 2 questions in one. First of all, any plans to get a pre-1980s classic in the future? And second of all, are you buying a Triumph Herald? For those of you that didn't know, Harley has got a mad Triumph Herald. First of all, I'm probably not going to buy a Triumph Herald, Harley, because frankly, I couldn't do one as cool as yours is, so I'll leave that one to you. And pre-80s classic, plans are in the works. Plans are in the works. It's probably only going to be in the next 12 months. It's not going to be next week, but one day, definitely. Inns Liam asks, are you ever going to track the Shinto? Probably not, in all honesty, unless I get a private track all to myself or a little kart track or something. I love that car far too much and I've put far too much work into it to risk binning it. And frankly, I get just enough enjoyment out of it bashing it down a B road, so probably not. And finally, Flynn_Gavs has asked a version of the question that I got asked more than any other for this Q&A, which is, would you buy a Fiat Coupe to replace the Alfa GTV? And indeed, I got a number of questions basically amounting to, are you going to replace the GTV? If so, what with? Probably not. I'm probably not going to buy anything to replace the GTV. One of the main reasons the GTV went was I initially bought it to be my daily driver because I thought long distance driving around for work, it'd be lovely. But in about the last month or so, I've actually got a company car. I've got a modern Mini 1499 GT, and frankly, that does everything I could ask of a car for what I need it to do. It takes all my stuff, it's economical, it's comfortable, it's practical enough, it's modern, which means it won't break, which means I don't have to drive it like that all the time. The other factor is space. When you take into account the Shinto, my mini company car, my classic project car from work, my brother's red Shinto, the Panda, my dad's work vehicle, and at some point the Scenic returning as well, that's a lot of cars in not a very big road that is already crowded. And frankly, for the sake of maintaining a good relationship with my neighbours, I might hold fire on buying another car just for now. So there we have it then. That's another Miller Corner Q&A, very hastily filmed in my mate's hallway. Thank you to everyone on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram who submitted a question, and if you do want to get one in next time, make sure you follow me on all those social media because I will reach out to you on those platforms first to get your question read out in the next Miller Corner Q&A. By the time you watch this, Festival Italia will be in just 2 days' time, and I will be there with the Super Seicento with a few little extra bits done to it that you haven't yet seen on video because they're coming out the week after. So if you are coming along, I'll see you there on the United Cento stand. But regardless, thanks very much for watching everybody, and have a brilliant rest of your day. Catch you soon, and have a good one.